what I found in your book is, because we all ask the question, does he have this much power over Republicans? You go into great detail about him learning the lessons between the first and second term. And he just showered members of Congress with all this attention. Tim Burchett said, telling reporters, he knows my name. I'm just so flattered he knows my name. Constantly calling him, constantly bringing him over to a point where you write, and this jumped off the page, on 211, you write, Trump wielded near total command over his party in Congress, command greater than any president before him.
Well, we tried to find any president where you could compare it for their own party in Congress. I defy you to tell me one where you can convince these guys, many of whom absolutely knew or felt that Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy were all, and this is in the views of quite a number of Republican senators, grossly unfit for office, and yet they just did it anyway. There were people who really didn't want to vote for his legislation, cut Medicaid in their districts and states. Huge problems. He got.
They do it anyway.
They do it anyway.
Up the point of Joni Ernst wanted to vote against Hegseth.
She saw her political life. Absolutely.
They went after her and crushed her.
There's two options, really. There's two options. You go along with it.
Fall in line.
Or you get crushed.
Right.
And they are open about that. I mean, Chris LaCivita, one of his operatives, said, I can't remember, you might remember the exact quote.
Yeah, it was on the record. It was essentially that, the iron fist rule that they take with the Republican Party, and if you don't fall in line, you get your effing head bashed in.
But it's this, they see it as a virtuous cycle, because what actually happens is fear raises money that generates more fear. Mm-hmm. So corporate America's terrified of him. So they go out and they say, hey, guys, we need some money, right? Mm-hmm. So all these companies give money. They build up their political war chest. Thomas Massie in Congress says, I'm not going to support this. They say, OK, the hammer's coming down. What's happened to Thomas Massie? He's out of Congress.
All right. So it's 4 minutes past the top of the hour. We're talking with Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan about their brand new book out today, Regime Change. We're going to have them on for quite some time to get into the details of which many of them are just absolutely, there's no words to describe the dramatic impact it's having on this country that you are both able to pin down. I want to pull back a little bit before we dive in deep, because you cover in great detail many dimensions of, I'll call it encroachment from this presidency down through the country into media, into changing the look of Washington, whether it's monuments in Washington or the White House itself, the judiciary, the concept of due process, the self-dealing going on, these detention centers across the country, improper deportations, Ukraine wars, alliances around the world. These are in no order of importance. But what ultimately, and I'd like to hear from both of you, is your conclusion about Donald Trump's state of mind and the ability of his team to do enduring damage? Maggie.
I don't fancy myself a psychiatrist. I don't know about his state of mind in terms of, sort of long-term.
What do you conclude after working on this book?
The same thing that we've been saying, really, which is that this is somebody who is uninhibited, who is operating on pure gut, who sees himself as this world figure. So one thing that I do want to talk about on a specific, if I can, just to make that point, when we had this interview with him on March 16th, which was at the end of our reporting process, and we had asked for an interview several times because he is the subject of the book, but the reporting was done. And we wanted to fact check with him. We did not want to just sit and have sort of an open mic night. And when we went in, first he greeted us with pictures of maple trees, which was what he was looking at. And the amount of time that he is spending on decor and sort of remaking the White House, Washington, in his image, and sort of trying to make sure that people can't take his name out of commission the way it happened before. So that is one thing he's very focused on. And then we asked him a question about power and how he sees his own power, because we knew that he had been talking about this with confidants, and we wanted to see what he would say. And he had, we were a few weeks into the war at this point. And he tells Natalie Harp, who is his ever-present aide who sits on the side of the wall in the Oval Office in almost every meeting. You know, go get the printouts. And then he says, do you know who Gary Player is? And we weren't really sure where this was going because Gary Player is a golfer and a very well-known one, yes. And so she comes back with these sheets of paper and she hands each of us a 2-pager. And he tells this story about how Gary Player introduced him to a historian, and a historian had this theory of the case about Trump. And this paper begins that Donald Trump is the most powerful person who has ever walked the earth, more than Mao, Stalin, Hitler, Napoleon, the Caesars. Yeah, he calls them the top 10. These are the top 10.
Top historian.
10. Yes, and the people he's naming are the top 10 of sort of the well-known influencers of history, so to speak. And that Trump is more powerful than any of them because he has the might of the U.S. military, because there's social media, because he's got reach. Right. And Trump is just sort of reveling in this. You know, he's reading the names, and I wasn't reading them along with him. I don't think Jonathan was either. And hearing him say it out loud was actually sort of jarring, of Hitler, Mao, Stalin. It turned out that this was not a historian. This was Jonathan went down a rabbit hole and tracked him down. We were asking what the name was, David King. He was Gary Player's business associate and caddy.
Almost a historian.
Right. But there was no moral assessment here of who Trump was happy to be in the company of.
Right.
It was about power and how it was being exercised. So that is my takeaway from all of this about his state of mind.